A few hours earlier, she'd been laughing, twirling on the dance floor, surrounded by people who loved her. She had just said "I do" to the man she believed was her soulmate, a wealthy, charming, flawless man on paper, a man who swept her off her feet and into a whirlwind romance that felt too good to be true. They kissed under a floral archway. Their guests cried happy tears. The night ended with fireworks over the Newport skyline. To everyone watching, it was picture perfect. But behind the door of that luxury suite, something had already started to unravel. Charlotte was found dead, face down in the hotel bathtub, water tinted red, a deep cut above her eyebrow. No signs of a break-in, no struggle that anyone could see. The police arrived thinking it was a tragic accident. Maybe she slipped, maybe she hit her head. But then they started asking questions, and that's when the mask began to crack. So the question wasn't just how did she die, but whether she ever truly knew the man she married. This wasn't just a case of betrayal. It was the slow, sickening discovery that the life Charlotte dreamed of was never real. That behind the tuxedo, behind the smile, behind the vows, was a man hiding a double life, and maybe even something worse. This is the story of Charlotte Harrington, a beautiful young woman full of hope, full of love, whose first night as a wife became her last night alive. This isn't just a case about love gone wrong. This is about a lie so detailed, so convincing, it pulled a smart, beautiful young woman into a world of illusion and ended with her life slipping away in silence. What happened to Charlotte Harrington that night was more than just heartbreaking. It was terrifying. Because her story doesn't begin with a fight, it begins with hope. And the man standing beside her just hours before, James Martin, wasn't just hiding a secret. He was hiding a whole other life, a second skin he wore perfectly. He didn't slip up, he didn't stutter. He sold everyone a dream, and Charlotte, she bought it. What she discovered on her wedding night, something that sent her reeling, something that may have made her threaten to leave, or worse, expose him. And if there's one thing predators hate, it's being seen. In the next hour, we're going to break this story wide open. We'll take you inside the investigation, into the lives that James Martin manipulated, and we'll reveal exactly how Charlotte Harrington ended up dead on the happiest night of her life. Charlotte Harrington was the kind of woman who lit up every room she entered. Not because she tried to, but because she couldn't help it. People remember her laugh, soft, easy, full of life. Her friends say she had a way of making everyone feel like they mattered. Her co-workers described her as driven, focused, sharp, but not cold. Never that. Charlotte was warm, grounded, a small-town girl who worked her way up with grit and grace. Born and raised just outside of Providence, Rhode Island, Charlotte came from a family of teachers, tradesmen, and long Sunday dinners. Her parents didn't have much, but they gave her everything she needed. Support, love, and a sense that she could become anything, and she did. She studied communications, interned relentlessly, and landed a position at a rising PR agency in Boston. Within 5 years, she was handling high-end clients, traveling for brand launches, and mentoring interns of her own. She was the success story you read about in local papers, the girl who made it without losing who she was. And then, she met him. James Martin was every inch the opposite. Tall, polished, charming, in that effortless way that makes you lean in before you even realize it. He was the sort of man who knew the right wine to order, the right words to say, the exact tie knot for every event. He introduced himself as a high-level investment banker, someone with deep roots in finance and deeper pockets to mat. His world? Private jets, yacht parties, midweek getaways to Switzerland. And yet somehow he wasn't arrogant. He was funny, attentive, and most dangerously, he listened. Charlotte was smitten. Everyone could see it. And James? He gave her the kind of attention that didn't feel rushed or rehearsed. He asked about her parents, her job, her dreams. He showed up at her office with flowers. He remembered the name of her niece. For 2 years, they were inseparable. Vacations to Santorini, dinner parties in Tribeca, matching Cartier watches. It was like a dream, the kind most girls keep tucked away in journals. Except Charlotte was living it. When James proposed in a candlelit rooftop garden overlooking the Boston skyline, Charlotte said yes through tears. Her friends cheered, Her mother wept, and her younger sister? She smiled, but later admitted something felt off. Something about his eyes, or maybe his answers, just didn't sit right, but she kept it to herself. After all, it wasn't her fairy tale. The wedding was held at one of Newport's most exclusive estates, a stone mansion that looked like it had been airlifted from the French Riviera. Ivy-covered walls, a private beach, handwritten place cards in gold calligraphy. Guests drank champagne, while a string quartet played gentle renditions of classic love songs. Charlotte wore a satin gown that shimmered under the garden lights. James looked dashing in a tailored tux, his smile perfect for the photos. They exchanged vows, under a floral arch as the sun dipped behind the bay. Everything, from the white doves released during the kiss to the imported orchid centerpieces, screamed perfection. But something unspoken lingered. Her sister, Caroline, caught James on the phone at one point, pacing, tense. When he noticed her watching, he smiled too quickly and slid the phone into his pocket. It was nothing, maybe, but it stuck with her. Later that evening, the newlyweds slipped away to their honeymoon suite, the penthouse of the Grand Mariner Hotel, a five-star icon just blocks from the reception. Surveillance footage captured them in the lobby, laughing, holding hands. James leaned over and kissed Charlotte on the forehead as the elevator doors closed. It would be the last time anyone saw Charlotte alive. At 7:42 the next morning, hotel housekeeping knocked on the suite door. No answer. At 8:10, using the staff keycard, they entered. What they found changed everything. Charlotte was in the bathtub. The water was cold, her skin pale, lifeless. A champagne flute was tipped over on the marble floor. And blood, just a faint streak, trailed down from the side of the tub. Her wedding dress, now crumpled in the corner, had smudges of something dark on it, possibly makeup, or maybe something else. But the most disturbing detail? The bruises. There were faint but visible dark marks on her neck, and a small abrasion on her shoulder. Not the kind of thing you get from slipping, not the kind you get from drowning. Police arrived within the hour. They reviewed security footage. James Martin had left the hotel at 4:19 a.m., alone, calm, not in a hurry, not flustered, just gone. Calls to his phone went straight to voicemail. His office hadn't heard from him. And by midday, his accounts, both financial and personal, had been wiped clean. No digital trail, no flight bookings, just silence. And the medical examiner's preliminary report, it sent a chill through the entire precinct. Charlotte didn't drown. She didn't overdose. There were bruises on her neck. She had fought back. And James Martin, the loving husband, had vanished into thin air. By morning, the fairy tale had unraveled into something far darker. As news of Charlotte's death spread, investigators quickly closed off the suite. The once lavish honeymoon room, now a silent, sterile crime scene. Her wedding dress bagged, the champagne glass photographed, blood samples swabbed. Detectives began working their way outward, starting with the people who knew her best. Her parents, still in disbelief. Her maid of honor, too stunned to cry, her sister Caroline, pale and shaking as she whispered the words she hadn't dared say the night before. Something about him felt wrong. They spoke to the wedding planner, the driver who dropped them at the hotel, the front desk clerk, housekeeping. Every detail mattered now. Every glance, every conversation, every hour accounted for. But the one person they needed to speak to most, the groom, was nowhere to be found. James Martin had disappeared. No credit card activity, no phone calls, no digital footprint. His car was still at the valet. There was no checkout, no airport footage, and yet he was gone. It wasn't until a tip came in from New York, from someone who recognized his face on the news, that they caught a break. A luxury penthouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side, registered under the name Ethan Graham. Same man, different identity, same smooth voice, same smile, different story. SWAT moved in. He didn't resist, he didn't run. He opened the door wearing a robe, sipping espresso, as if he were expecting a guest. His tone? Calm, casual, as if none of this were real. He said he had no idea what happened to Charlotte, that they'd argued, sure, but that she was fine when he left. Maybe she slipped, he offered. but his eyes never matched his words. Back at the precinct, investigators began peeling back the layers of James Martin, or Ethan Graham, or whatever his real name was. Fingerprints came back with multiple hits, different aliases in different states, several foreign passports, British, Canadian, South African, all legit looking, all fake. Employment records were patchy at best, gaps so wide you could fall into them, companies that didn't exist, tax documents with mismatched addresses. His social security number was tied to 3 separate identities. Each time they looked closer, they found more shadows. One chilling discovery came when they dug into a past relationship, a woman named Elena Monroe, a bright, spirited travel photographer who had once been engaged to him. The engagement made headlines back in 2019, mostly because it ended without explanation. Elena vanished 2 weeks before their destination wedding in Greece. Her friends said she was excited but nervous. One even remembered her saying something strange. "If anything happens to me, look at him first." They thought she was joking. No one thought to press. What the detectives found next stopped everyone cold. Just 6 months before her disappearance, Elena had filed a police report in Miami. She said James was following her, that she spotted him outside her studio more than once, that he was calling from blocked numbers, showing up in places he shouldn't be. Her report was marked as non-threatening and ultimately dismissed. She told a friend she was thinking about canceling the wedding, then stopped answering texts. Her parents flew to Greece the week of the ceremony, hoping it was all a misunderstanding. They never found her. No suitcase, no boarding pass, just an empty hotel room and silence. Now, with James in custody, investigators secured a warrant for the Manhattan penthouse. What they found inside would haunt even the most hardened detectives. Inside a locked drawer in his study, carefully stacked and labeled, were dozens of photographs, not of scenery, not family, but of women, candid shots, taken from behind, from windows, through fences, all unaware, all seemingly ordinary women. Some were dated, others weren't. Some had first names written in pencil. A few, like Charlotte, were clearly recognizable. Others weren't. Some had been taken years ago, some just months. There were also receipts, plane tickets, restaurant bills, hotel keys, all tied to different cities, different identities. The pieces were connecting now, painfully, terrifyingly. One detective said it best. He didn't just lie about who he was, he erased who he really is. He was a ghost, wearing a designer suit. And just when they thought they finally had a grip on James Martin, they opened a second safe. Inside, another envelope, more photos. But these weren't just snapshots. They were detailed logs, notes, dates, GPS coordinates, all of women, all alone. The question was no longer, who was James Martin? It was, how many Charlottes had there been before? If your heart's pounding right now, you're not alone. What started as a dreamy wedding, candlelit vows, silk gowns, string quartets playing beneath chandeliers, has unraveled into a chilling descent. A man with no true name, a bride dead on her wedding night, and a vault filled with the faces of women who never even knew they were being watched. It's a lot to process, and trust me, it only gets darker from here. So if you're still with us, and I know this isn't easy to hear, now's the perfect time to hit that like button. It helps us bring more untold stories like this one into the light. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. That way, you never miss the next twist in stories that are all too real. These aren't just headlines, they're lives, lives stolen, stories buried, and truths that someone out there didn't want uncovered. Also, I want to know something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Whether you're in London, Chicago, Berlin, Cape Town, or sitting alone in your room wide-eyed like the rest of us, let's connect. You're not just a viewer. You're part of a growing community of people who believe that the truth still matters, that victims deserve their voices back, and that sometimes it takes all of us to piece together what really happened. Take a breath, shake off the chill, because what comes next will stay with you long after this video ends. When Charlotte Harrington's autopsy report landed on Detective Rowley's desk, there was no longer room for doubt. The water in the bathtub hadn't killed her. She didn't overdose. She didn't slip. Her cause of death? Manual strangulation. And it wasn't random. The bruises, dark, precise, deliberate, formed a pattern. Pressure on the neck from a single hand, a left hand, the same hand James Martin wrote with, ate with, signed marriage papers with just hours earlier. Charlotte's wedding night had ended not in love, not in celebration, but in violence, at the hands of the man who had promised to protect her for life. But who was that man, really? When police secured a warrant and drilled into James Martin's financial world, the illusion began to split apart at the seams. A safety deposit box in a nondescript bank downtown contained the first crack. A bundle of untraceable cash, SIM cards labeled only with dates, and one burner phone, its battery removed but not wiped clean. They powered it on. And what they found was grotesque in its precision. Dozens of text threads, each to a different woman, each under a different name. Nathan Caldwell, Robert Stein, Julian West. A different backstory for each, a different profession, a different voice, same manipulation, same seduction. James Martin was a ghost, but ghosts don't move money, and James, he moved millions. Investigators followed the money trail, and it was ugly. He wasn't just a liar, he was a thief. Offshore accounts traced back to shell corporations with addresses in the Caymans, Zurich, and Belize. Victims? Mostly older investors. Promised fast returns, fed empty numbers, left dry. One retired teacher had sunk her entire pension. A grieving widower invested his late wife's life insurance payout, all gone. And then the truth detonated. James Martin didn't exist. His fingerprints, long removed from official databases, matched an old file, buried in a Chicago fraud case from over a decade ago. A man named Ethan Graham, charged in 2011 with orchestrating a multi-million-dollar investment scam. He had vanished in 2012, presumed dead in a boating accident off Lake Michigan. But Ethan never died. He reinvented himself. Clean cut, Ivy League smile, no past, no paper trail, just charm and a few well-placed lies. And Charlotte Harrington wasn't his first target. Remember Elena Monroe, the fiancée who vanished before her dream wedding in Greece? She had been asking questions, doubting him, digging. 2 weeks before her flight, Elena filed a police report, accusing James of stalking her. She said he was showing up in places he shouldn't have known about, that he'd broken into her apartment and rearranged her photos. Nothing stolen, nothing damaged, just moved. She disappeared shortly after, but the night before her flight to Greece, the night before she was set to marry Ethan Graham, she made one last phone call. Not to her sister, not to a friend, to a private investigator. She had discovered something big. She told him to meet her the next morning at a cafe in Athens. She never showed. Police believe she never made it past the airport. Her body, still missing. But just when detectives thought they had the full picture, a final twist shattered everything again. Someone came forward. Someone who had been at the same Newport hotel the night Charlotte died. A housekeeper. Quiet, nervous. She had waited, unsure of what she'd seen. But after seeing James's face on the news, she couldn't stay silent anymore. She swore. She saw James Martin. But he wasn't alone in the room that night. He brought someone else in, a woman. So who was the mystery woman? Another victim? An accomplice? Or someone playing an even deadlier game behind the scenes? If you're still watching and want to know what happened next, drop the word "next" in the comments section and let us know where you're watching from. I promise to read and reply every single comments. It's always incredible to see how far these stories reach.